Hi, this is Will Stewart from OnlineChessLessons.net, and today I'm going to be taking a look at a game from the recent Super Tournament, Biel 2011, and it's a game between Magnus Carlsen and Alexei Shirov. And so Carlsen starts out with knight f3 and d4, and so knight c3 and e6. So here Shirov is saying he's playing the Slav defense against Carlsen's Queen's Gambit. And so Carlsen plays a main line with bishop d3. There's also some other lines that delay the development of this bishop so that you won't lose a tempo after black takes d takes c4, such as bishop d2, stuff like this, so that when you do move the bishop, it'll just be straight, directly capture that pawn. So going back, Carlsen just goes straight to it, bishop d3, and now when Shirov exchanges on c4, this is entering the semi-Slav defense. And so with b5, now this is called the Meran Defense, and after bishop d3, and Shirov plays a pretty quick, a6 to get in c5 immediately before white has a chance to try to shut that down. And so after e4, white is already castled, and he's got excellent development in the center. Black does have okay development, but one of his main problems in this line is that white is always trying to break open the center with moves like d5 and rook e1, while black's king is still stuck on the e file. But black's got to get his counterplay. He's got to open up this bishop, and he needs to get in c5 before white tries to shut it down, maybe with knight, with a3 and b4, stuff like that. So he plays c5, and now d5, quickly by Carlsen. So he's really trying to open the center and put the pressure on black, and maybe you can create a weak pawn here on e6. And so after c4, this is it's pretty much the main line is c4, and so bishop c2. And so now it's getting to be an interesting position because Shirov plays queen c7, another main line in this position, and the idea is that there's a couple different moves. I think rook e1 is possible. D takes e6 is usually played immediately here, I believe. And so after this, black does have a weak pawn on e6, but it's guarding the critical d5 and f5 squares. And, it's kind of helping protect his king because the e file is closed. Maybe play could continue knight d4, and knight c5 tends to hold the balance pretty well for black because he's got good development, good coordination. His king's a little sketchy, but he usually makes it out okay. So after queen c7, Carlsen plays knight d4 very quickly, and it's kind of an interesting move. I haven't seen it very much, and the idea is pretty simple, just trying to build up pressure on this pawn before releasing the tension in the position by exchanges. And so now e5, Shirov thought for about 15 minutes, and e5 seems a little risky to me. Maybe the direct knight c5 would have been a little more calm, because e5 maybe white can try to open the game with f4. But e5 and now g6 by Shirov. So he wants to kick the knight before it becomes too much of a nuisance. And now Carlsen quickly played knight h6, and this is just a weird move. I can only assume it was home preparation because Carlsen was playing almost instantly. Now knight to h5. And so now white could have played the immediate queen f3, but the problem is black has knight to f4, and all of a sudden the knight on h6 is a little bit lonely. So instead he plays g3 first, so that now, obviously knight can't come to f4. So now Shirov thinks 43 minutes on bishop c5. And he was coming up with this plan. I guess bishop c5 is logical. He wants to prevent f4 because of this pin. So that's definitely logical. And against queen f3, so white's still trying to force open the center. Against queen f3, he's working to prevent f5, and he's also threatening some nasty stuff on f7. So Shirov plays rook to f8 here, defending. And I think he, when he was thinking about the bishop c5 plan, he was already angling to play f5 to break the center and maybe try to attack white's king. So now bishop d2, so he's just trying to get settled in and also setting up some tactics here. So bishop to d4. I'm guessing the tactic went something like this. If black isn't careful, let's say black plays knight back, the instant b4, so that after takes, knight takes b5, and black is going to have some serious problems on the dark squares. So Shirov played bishop d4, so just sticking his bishop in, and maybe he's trying to get the knight to c5 and really start putting some pressure on white's position. But the problem for black in this position, b4. So Carlsen plays it anyway. And if black doesn't take this pawn, white's going to play a4, and his rooks are going to be connected, while black's rooks have a difficult time getting coordinated. Black's king is also in the center, so going king e7 is going to be kind of tough to defend the whole game. And so Shirov plays c takes b3. Now the real problem for black in this position is that it's very difficult for him to castle queenside because of the open c file. And white's going to have a lot of tactics based on that c file. So it's pretty tough here for black, but he plays queen d6, so he gets his queen off the c file first. And now rook c1, so Carlsen's still, any kind of castling attempts, just going to meet a nasty discover check. So he goes ahead and, fixes black's king in the center with rook c1. It's also good to put the rook on an open file. And so now knight g7, so Shirov's getting his plan together. He's thinking about challenging the center with f5, but his king is still a major concern. And now with a4, here's where I think Shirov went desperately wrong. I think in the game he played f5, but I think he could have played b4. And if any knight a2, he can bring the pawn up, and he's got something. And if b4, if knight e2, maybe bishop to b6. And I just don't know if white tries to sack a pawn, which he probably would, and bishop to a4, trying to take advantage of black's king. Maybe black maybe he can live through this. But it's going to be very difficult. Anyway, I thought that was his choice. I thought that was his last chance, was to play b4 here, because after this, it just goes downhill. So he plays immediately f5, and Shirov is completely nuts, so there's no surprise there as he complicates things. But the problem is, this allows the opening of the position, and specifically files diagonals to attack black's king. So a takes, and now he plays f4. So Shirov sacks a pawn to get this pawn to f4. So he did achieve something, but knight e2. So trying to break open the center, maybe e5, and so bishop back to b6. And now this is a very difficult position. It looks like black has achieved good counterplay because he's got the pawn on f4. The bishops are kind of raking the board here, but the problem is just bishop c4, and all of a sudden black doesn't really have that much counterplay. Maybe a move like pawn takes, but it just seems maybe queen takes, and that's just helping white play f4 and break the center and go after black's king even more. So here, Shirov played g5. I didn't really see anything better. It's a pretty tough position. King e7, this kind of transposes to the game. Rook c6, penetrating on this a3, f8 diagonal will be decisive. So king e7 doesn't work. g5 takes. Check. This was a nice finesse. Could have played rook to d3 first. Although then, I don't know, it doesn't quite have the same effect with the king on e8. Because the bishop, say rook c6, queen a3 doesn't work, as in similar lines, because of this bishop b4 move. Even threatening rook to c8 as well. So, anyway, Carlsen accurately plays rook to c8. And the idea is that if king to f7, then I think white's got the same idea, or king to e7, then the same idea with rook c6. And now bishop's coming to b4. So queen can't go to a3, queen b8. And this same check is it's going to win the exchange. It's going to be an easy mop-up for white. So instead, Shirov tried to defend with bishop to d8. And this lost pretty quickly. So knight f5 first, and now pawn takes. In this position, Shirov, again, he could have tried something like king to f7, But this would run into a nice tactic to win a piece for white. Something like this. And the check is just going to mop it up a piece. So instead, after knight takes, pawn takes, knight to f6, and after queen did d3, so starting to hit this, and also trying to penetrate along these diagonals, which just proved to be decisive. Black couldn't keep up. Rook to a7, and now after check, the game's over, because if in anything black does, rook d7, bishop b4, white's going to win a lot of material and open the position. And in the game, Shirov tried queen d7 with 2 minutes left and resigned after rook takes d8 because, let's see, king takes d8, check, and now if queen c8, queen takes a7, king e7, simple check, the game's over. So a very fine attacking game by Magnus Carlsen. And I like how Shirov tries to play, but maybe sometimes a little bit too crazy, leaving the king in the center a little bit too long. So this is Will Stewart from OnlineChessLessons.net, and thanks for tuning in.